why poverty is rising in America, and I think we have something here that I can show some stuff and do some stuff. Cool. This is in Substack that I found, and it was kind of upsetting, but it's at the same time proving that the shitlibs narrative is falling apart. And you know what? Let me get rid of my start bar here. Right there, that'll help. Bingo. Cool. So, why poverty is rising? So, this is by Jeremy Ney from American Inequality. This is a really good Substack that he just looks at numbers. So, I'm not very excited about any piece digging into poverty by region, but I understand that he's a numbers nerd, so he is. All right.
It's all about geometry.
That the Census Bureau wants a test asking about sexual orientation and gender identity on community survey. Okay. And why black, so there are a few little ideas that he pulls out of here, but what's happening here is, let me see if I can highlight this. The U.S. poverty rate just had its largest one-year increase, but some regions still struggle far more than others. And that is, zoom in on your hometown. So it saw its largest one-year increase in history. 12.4% of Americans, according to this new survey from the U.S. Census data, now live in poverty, which is an increase from 7.4%. That's child poverty, which Biden proudly proclaimed that he had ended, or at least
allegedly
cut in half. Right, of course.
Cut it in half. He cut it in half.
Right, now more than doubled.
Like those magicians do with the ladies in the box.
From 5.2 to 12.4%.
Yeah.
The poverty level is now at $13,590 for individuals, $23,000 for a family of 3.
Yep.
I would disagree with those numbers, but okay. America had previously experienced tremendous improvements in poverty reduction.
Tremendous.
Tremendous. We still need to pull over here a little bit more. Over you. And tighten that up a little bit. And bring it down. There we go. Look better.
And action.
And action. So America had previously experienced tremendous improvements in poverty reduction over the past 2 years. Safety net programs, including expanded child tax credit, had lifted millions out of poverty and provided direct aid to low-income households. However, as programs like this were allowed to expire, the data shows that these programs were a short-lived lifeline. But didn't have to be. Supplemental Poverty Measure, the SPM, which has now largely replaced the official poverty rate, calculates the poverty rate after accounting for many of the government's most important anti-poverty programs, as well as differences in the cost of living. So this is where poverty lives, for example. California, Mississippi, and Florida have the highest poverty rates of any state. And you can see...
Yeah, we're the highest. Florida's high. Oh, wait, no, it's poverty. Dang.
Texas, New York,
I thought
Nevada,
we were number one for a second.
all up there.
Mississippi's normally number one in poverty. Usually.
You know? So,
yep.
Oof, it's Kentucky 10.8. But and there's a lot of, look, West Coast, that's high everywhere. Jeez. That is high everywhere.
Yep. Cost of living is ridiculous.
Right? So California, Florida, and Mississippi,
like they don't want us living.
The 3 states with the highest percentage of residents living in poverty. These represent an interesting mix of regions that economists don't typically see together. Correct. I also don't know if this counts homeless, because what they're talking about is residents living in poverty. Are homeless people considered residents if they can't really be counted? I mean, I don't know how you count them. So, what do you think?
I don't know. I guess that census information would be what they're basing that off of, right?
Correct. So I'm not sure if the census counts them. But much of California's poverty occurs in northern counties, which are home to farming, mining, and manufacturing, of course, communities. High costs across the state have also led to higher poverty rates, as often seen in San Fran and LA, with 4.5 million people living in poverty there. No, we don't have a problem or anything. Let's just allow that to continue to snowball and spiral. That sounds like a good idea. All right. Florida's higher poverty rates largely occur across the state's panhandle. In Gadsden County, for example, 1 in 4 people live in poverty, while 2 in 5 children do as well. Wow.
I'm technically panhandle, although Gulf Coast panhandle, but same difference.
Right.
You know, Gadsden's not far from me.
Awesome.
Yeah, poverty rate here is, I'm sure, extremely high. Like,
So residents of Gadsden graduate high school at only half the rate as their peers in the rest of Florida. For decades, these low levels of educational attainment have plagued the region with high levels of unemployment and corresponding higher rates of poverty. That makes sense, right? Then they talk a little bit about poverty in Mississippi, which is not concentrated in one area, but spreads far across the state. Yeah, the whole state's poor. Of course, yeah. Famously. Regions with the highest poverty rates are concentrated around the Mississippi River, which are also the regions with the highest black populations. Looking at numbers here. Mississippi's black residents are 3 times more likely to live in poverty than white residents, one of the worst ratios of any state in America. No surprise to anybody in this chat or watching or listening. In Tunica County...
Yeah, but bootstraps.
Right. In Tunica County, right where the Mississippi River meets Tennessee, 68% of black families live in poverty, and 23.8% are unemployed, according to a U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Like, yeah, again, versus 12% of white families in poverty and 2% unemployed. Yeah, there's no imbalance there or anything. Again, just looking at these numbers, you start to get pretty angry. This is where they're talking about frontline fast food workers in California is basically below the poverty wage. What? So broken. So they talk about this story about Percy Parker living in poverty in California, struggling with 2 deep dilemmas as a fast food worker. First, she explained that when she hasn't eaten all day, she'll pour leftover smoothie from someone else's order into a cup and let that sustain her for her shift.
Smart thinking.
Very smart. Oh. She fears that management will call it stealing and that she'll be fired or prosecuted, despite the fact that it's going to be thrown out anyway.
Right, like all the food that like donut shops and all these other places, like if you take one bit of bread, whatever, you're fired. You just got to throw it all away. Wild.
You know? So, yep. Percy knows her customers aren't eating well when they consume her giant sugary drinks, and she knows how much food's wasted despite the demand for migrant workers to bring them fresh fruit. She dreams that big companies will share their abundant resources. Well, that's a dream. With the many of us who contribute to their successes, and with those of us who are simply struggling to survive. It's going to take more than just dreams. Fast food workers make up 6% of California's homeless population and 11% of the state's homeless workers. So I guess they are counting homeless, to answer my question from earlier. But this really got me pretty...
Oh, God. The White House's response is going to be fucking dumb.
You know the thing.
It's pretty brutal because if you just look at this on a timeline, they start at the crisis right as Obama takes office, and it's really high. And, look at the numbers, and looks like some kind of policy did something that brought it all the way down to about here, and this is pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Still at a much substantially lower level than at any time in the decade prior.
2022. this
Well,
graph.
yes, but remember that
Look at this
starting
graph.
in 2020, they started giving out COVID money.
Yes.
So that's when you started to see the rise or the stemming of all of this. But when that started to end, when unemployment extensions started to run out, when mortgage payment extensions started to come back, you started to see these defaults and all these poverty levels rising on top of inflation and wages not keeping up. So what Jeremy has to say about this is that the White House was quick to jump in after the census data release, right? Blaming the rise in child poverty on congressional Republicans, of course. He derided Republicans' refusal to extend the enhanced child tax credit, and went further to say that the rise reported today in child poverty is no accident. Right, economists found that child poverty would have been nearly 50% lower in 2022 if the expanded child tax credit had remained in place. Wow. And if I remember correctly, it was also the Democrats that allowed that to expire, and they could have continued with that. We also found that the Earned Income Tax Credit, the EITC, had a profound impact in poverty reduction, and nobody really talks about that. It's not sexy. It's like Paygo. It's not sexy.
It's Paygo,
right? But that had a profound impact. The number of children living below.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
The macro and the micro. Yes.
What are you, a chipmunk?
That's the funnier one. The funnier version of that is when Turncoat Don plays it like that. It's just
speed it up.
Yep. Number of children living below the poverty line would have been 25% higher without the Earned Income Tax Credit, and the program also decreased poverty severity for another 17 million people. Biden's 2024 budget proposed expanding it, though Republicans, of course, remain opposed because Harlem Globetrotters and Washington Generals, current poverty rates, though, are still below historic levels, like it showed, and look most similar to rates seen in 2019. It seemed like that was a little higher than that, but while financial hardship has decreased for Black and Hispanic Americans, poverty rates have now returned to pre-pandemic levels. Right?
Okay.
What he's talking about there specifically is right here. This pink line. I get
the line.
Yeah, I know what he's saying.
The line's lying.
The line is absolutely lying. Yes, thank you.
Like,
of course.
Who's taking this information again?
Right.
Who's polling all this?
The Census Bureau. And then this American Inequality.
Who's run by...
Yeah. The federal government.
As of right now.
Nonpartisans, supposedly.
Yes.
Right?
Allegedly.
Yes. This is also no surprise because we certainly covered this. We covered that 3 months ago. Shout out to somebody that everybody in chat should know who that is. For Americans over 65, support has not arrived. The poverty rate rose to 14.1% for these older Americans, reaching levels not seen since 2016. This happened despite the 8.7% cost of living adjustment in Social Security payments, largely because labor force participation among older people has remained low. And they're talking about this as a bad thing, as pandemic job losses have made it harder for this group to re-enter the workforce. How about they shouldn't have to re-enter the workforce?
Yeah.
So I got it. Yes, Sebastiano, our buddy E. Heller. Why is this not work? I guess I don't have this this turned on here. So let's turn on Restream chat.
Bridget. Oh. Hear that too.
There she is. Volcano Party 2024. Yeah. Volcano Party. All right. What can we do? The path forward. Poverty in America reflects the inequality that plagues U.S. households. While certain regions have endured this pain much more than others, this new rising trend may spell ongoing challenges for even more communities. Federal support over the last 3 years showed just how much progress communities can make to reduce poverty, but the data now reveals what happens when those resources dry up. So how about we not dry them up, like, for once?
Right.
Right. I don't know why that's not showing the right chat. So
Well, money needs to go to Ukraine, bro. Don't worry about it.
Oh, right. They
And
spent
now Israel
$200
and Taiwan.
billion. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So we can expand the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. That together lifted 10.6 million people above the poverty line and made poverty less severe for 17.5 million others in 2018. Right? So these initiatives have been some of America's most successful poverty alleviation programs ever and have been particularly helpful for Black and Hispanic communities. So let's continue them.
Sounds like something Harry Sisson would be talking about. He's like, go cut the poverty and the jobs, and it's so good. People, listen. I'm riding with Biden, and this is fucking welcome to Jackass.
I'm trying to Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass. No, that's later. That's at Boats. By the way, I forgot to mention Boats during the intro. Damn it. All right. Anyway,
whatever.
Earned
People
income
know.
and child tax credit are as close as America gets on a consistent basis for direct cash payments to low-income communities, which have similarly proven to be deeply impactful for poverty reduction. How about that? You give people money, they spend it on goods and services and lift themselves out of poverty. State-specific programs in regions with higher poverty can be essential for making an impact. Yep. And then we've also could provide wage support for workers. Yes. Why it's necessary is the other problem. How about we pay people more and we don't require this? But of the 37.9 million people who live in poverty, that's still just a disgraceful number. It hurts to even have to say that more than 10% of our entire country is living in poverty. We live in a failed system, as Jimmy Dore says. This is a failed system.
Yep.
So, of the 37.9 million who live in poverty right now, which is amazing, 6.3 are still working full-time jobs. 1 in 25 people in the workforce are actually living in poverty. So,
we're fucked.
Yes. Thank you, Misty. Miss you. In California, 1 in 3 people who lived in poverty reported having at least one family member working a full-time job for the entire year. Yeah.
You better work, bitch.
Well, yeah. Employers simply are not paying their employees enough to live. We know this. We need to increase minimum wages in states, particularly in the 15 states with a 7.25 minimum wage still, which is the federal level. Restaurant workers are more likely, of course, than any profession to live in poverty because in a lot of states, you've got a $2.13 minimum wage for waiters and waitresses and for wait staff and for kitchen staff. I mean, and they all live on tips. And according to the Economic Policy Institute, of course, would be a great place to start for addressing wage poverty. I would love to be able to see both our teachers and our restaurant workers, and as well as bus drivers. Bus drivers for especially like school bus drivers have been like screwed. So the other thing is that we need to address intergenerational poverty because of the amount of seniors that are becoming homeless and poor. But here they're talking also 3-generation poverty is a uniquely Black problem. Oh, I wonder why that is. Couldn't have anything to do with this country, country's policies or anything over those 3 generations. Researchers from Brookings analyzed the incomes of grandparents, parents, and children and found that 1 in 5 Black Americans are experiencing poverty for the 3rd generation in a row, compared to just 1 in 100 white Americans. The challenge of upward mobility for Black Americans is deeply interwoven with so many social challenges like housing, education, healthcare, incarceration, and much more. Hey, you know what would fix all that? A lot of that would be reparations. Yeah, reparations might do something to direct
universal payments. Reparations, even
direct cash payments. I'm not a universal basic income guy, but you know, there's a lot of.
It's all right. We'll teach you. We'll
Well,
fix that for you.
Well,
You'll learn.
Well, except that they'll just raise the rents and the cost of living beyond the UBI, and then
no, we just make them not do that. It's very easy.
That's a great idea. I'm down with the sickness, I guess. Maybe
It literally is a great idea that countries have already done, and it didn't do what you're worried about. But continue.
Okay, just pay people, right? So before we go to our next story from the Bean Boy, or actually the Bean Boy's publication, but not Bean Boy himself. This is Hesnim Zakaria. Let me tighten that up a little bit and bring that up a little bit more. And I also want to add Twidget so that I can put a chat on screen, because I used to be able to do that, but I don't know what happened because all of a sudden I can't. So now we're going to bring it back so that I can. But of course it's shorting out on me and doesn't want to show. So let's reboot that. Nope, doesn't want to work now. Okay. All right. Technical difficulties. Hi, everybody. Hi, chat. Wow, we got 27 people watching live over there. We got people over on the Rockfin. We got people over on the Rumble. And we are cranking through. How do we miss that? It is INN. It is Indie Left Media. You can watch us everywhere, like I say. And here is, let's go back to out of studio mode. Hey, there we go.
Don't you normally put stuff like over on the right instead of full screening it? Normally for...
Yeah, but something's all messed up tonight. So I don't know what's happening here. But anyway.
Whatever.